Nina Schick, a policy analyst at the Open Europe think tank. Thanks for joining us today, Nina. I mean, how cordial do you think the lunch was, given the conversations that earlier on today?
Well, Lorna, I think it's very important to distinguish when it comes to the issue of Europe. There is an issue that's EU reform, and then there's another issue that's treaty change. Now, David Cameron would like to see reform in the EU, and on that point, both Hollande and Cameron were very much united. They want to see an EU that works better for competitiveness, for growth, and for jobs. Now, when it came to treaty change, Hollande said it was not a priority, whilst David Cameron said, that he would like to have some kind of treaty change. However, that is not a new position. That has always been the French position. And it's important to remember that France is not the only player in this debate. Germany certainly has a debate going on about treaty change, and sooner or later that issue will have to be addressed. And I'd like to add that position, Hollande's position, is not absolute. The way the French negotiate is they lay out clear red lines, and then afterwards you go on from there. So it's not an absolute position. And encouragingly, the EU reform agenda itself was very much welcomed.
And presumably in that environment that they're in, it is fine to agree to disagree.
Absolutely. I mean, we're very, the whole EU is 28 extremely different countries, and that diversity and those differences are something that strengthens the EU. I was at a lunch yesterday with the CBI and the German equivalent to the CBI, where they were saying that's exactly what makes us great. We should celebrate that diversity. We should always question everything. We shouldn't just accept a dogma and follow that faith, but always be looking for differences that can make us sharper and better and more competitive in the world.
But there are agreements on some areas. What is it that the French, the British, are working closely on?
So obviously, as the political correspondent laid out, when it comes to defence, that's where France and the UK have a lot in common. We saw that, and they will continue to work together in those areas. That's an area where the other big European power, Germany, is very reluctant and hesitant. So France and the UK will continue to take the lead there, and that also gives the UK some leverage whilst negotiating a new deal in Europe.
How, Nina, I'm not asking you to comment on President Hollande's private life, but how difficult is it in these sorts of negotiations when David Cameron would have known that the British press were going to bring that up, and whether it does make people negotiating with a French president who has this cloud over him, makes it more difficult?
Well, I think that he certainly expected that may be raised, and I think that he wouldn't take that out personally on David Cameron. It's almost like that. This is not so much about Hollande's affair, but the actual substance of policy, when you get down to the policy, which is the important thing. Because what David Cameron is trying to do, and other Europe, is to new Europe that actually works better for growth and for jobs, and it's a bit of a shame when the actual important story gets overtaken by Hollande's affair.
Very interesting. Nina, thank you very much for talking to us today.